this is Aaron Kupferberg with Power Popaholic, and today we are talking to Cliff Hillis, whose latest album, Dream Good, is out now. And how are you doing, Cliff?
Doing great, thanks. How are you?
Good. Now, let me go through, let me start at the beginning here. What was it like growing up in Delaware, and what made you decide to become a musician?
Let's see. I'd have to say, well, it was good fun growing up in Delaware because I grew up down in Rehoboth Beach, which was like the little kind of beach shore town, and it was a great place to be a teenager and that kind of stuff. And I have a brother who's 3 years older than me, so when I was like 9 years old, my brother's 12 years old, we got some guitars for Christmas, some Sears guitars, and kind of just played around. But by the time when I was maybe like 12 years old, and my brother's 15, we kind of took some guitar lessons, and he was really into bands like Kiss and Cheap Trick and that kind of stuff. So he definitely got me kind of inspired to rock, so to speak. So yeah, so that's sort of how I got started. We played in bands together for a number of years, and we still play together every once in a while.
Was was the Forward Thinkers your first band officially?
First solo band, yes. I had numerous bands that I've been in over the years, and quote unquote my band. Early on, I had a few kind of local bands in the Delaware area with my brother, and then the first band that I really kind of like traveled a bit more and felt like we kind of made a mark would be Starbelly from Baltimore,
right?
And it was in equal parts. Three of us were kind of equal members instead of it being like my band. But in 2000, when I put out my first solo record, "Be Seeing You," that's when I kind of got the Forward Thinkers together, and it's been a slightly rotating lineup, but mostly similar guys, some friends of mine playing with me, and it's kind of on and off. And so that's the first official band of mine, quote unquote, after my first solo record.
Yeah, I still love that Starbelly album. It's just incredible.
Oh, cool, yeah.
I still think about it.
Working on new stuff. Starbelly has been totally making great music since I've been a part of it. But I've been hanging out a bit here and there over the last couple of years with Dennis, who's sort of the main guy at Starbelly, and written some songs, and a couple of which have shown up on my records, and slowly working on a new Starbelly record where it's going to be me, Dennis, and Greg, and Brian, the guy who kind of took my place when I stopped playing with them.
Wow. Okay, cool. Tell me a little bit about your time with Ike, because I think a lot of your first solo record really, it was almost like you enmeshed yourself in that band for a while, and when you came out of it to do your own solo stuff, you still sounded a little bit like Ike. It took another album, I think, for you to sort of move away from that sound. But tell me a little bit about your time and how you got along with John Fay.
Oh, sure, yeah. I always loved John. I would go see the Caulfields, and if I recall correctly, I opened up for them once or twice, with bands I had at that time, and was always a huge fan, and we were always friends, and never really traveled in the same circles early on, but we would see each other every once in a great while. I do remember like a funny thing that one time I do guitar tech here and there when I'm not playing gigs, and the first official guitar tech gig I had was for the band The Innocence Mission from Lancaster, and they had a record. It was like 1996 or something like that, way back. But the Caulfields were touring, and I think that's when Devil's Diary, the big song, was happening.
Yep.
And I was touring with The Innocence Mission as guitar tech, and somewhere on some turnpike somewhere, I remember we pulled to a rest stop, and as we were going in, the Caulfields were walking out. I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" So that was kind of funny and they both happened to be on A&M Records, actually, both bands. But anyway, yeah. So when the Caulfields broke up, I would occasionally run into John Fay, and he asked me early on. He was kind of putting a solo thing together if I would, be interested, and of course I was a huge fan of his stuff, and so I was psyched to have the opportunity. And I guess it wouldn't have been a conscious decision or choice that my stuff sounded like Ike, but John and I definitely were influenced by a lot of the same bands, and we spent a lot of time driving around and, you know, like listening to stuff on our long drives, because we would go down to Atlanta and up to Boston, a bunch, you know, traveling. So, and I'm a huge fan of John's writing, so yeah, it certainly wasn't conscious, but probably did, you know, rub off a little bit here and there, and I take that as a great compliment if seeing the first record sounds, you know, like John Faye's writing.
Yeah, you've also played with a huge amount of, like, extremely talented artists. A lot of them that I'm huge fans of. You've played with you know, Eric Bazillion of the Hooters, Danny Wilde of the Rembrandts, and a good favorite of mine, Willie Wisely, who came out with an album this year.
Yes.
Out of all these guys, and there are a couple more that I didn't even name, is there anybody you think that made a biggest impression on you, or one of the biggest impressions on you?
Huh, that's a good question. Let's see. Well, I was always a big fan of the Hooters, you know, early on when, you know, and that was, again, back in the day when I had bands with my brother. One of our big shows was opening up for, well, actually, it wasn't even the Hooters. It was Tommy Conwell, who was another guy from the area who was managed by the same company. But so I was a big fan of, like, all the Philly bands from back at that time. Mm-hmm. So I finally did get to know the Hooters guys, which is only in recent years. You know, that definitely was inspiring, and so. But I'll tell you, I'd say that the first co-write that you know, of like, you know, writing with somebody kind of note would be, I think that I had written with other people, but writing with Danny Wilde, getting together with him, I'd have to say that it was, and that, you know, it wasn't like incredibly long ago, but I opened up a show in Bethlehem, PA for the Rembrandts, and that was the first time I met them, and I was obviously a huge fan, and ended up chatting a bunch with Danny Wilde, you know, after the show, backstage, whatnot, and just kind of threw it out there because I was sort of making a point to want to try to co-write with, you know, people that I was a fan of, that where in the past I would have been more shy and maybe not, you know, go for it. I've kind of made a point to start just saying, hey, I would run into somebody, and I think that's exactly what I did, and I think he was maybe even kind of thrown off at first because I kind of threw it out there, and he said, hey, sure, and he gave me his email, and we kind of, you know, stayed in touch, and he was such an incredibly nice guy and such a pro that was really, I feel like the stuff that when I got together with him and the first batch of songs, because I just played him a bunch of little snippets, and we probably worked on 3 or 4 songs, and 2 of which ended up being completed. That was one of the most inspiring things, because I just, you know, it was like, I was such a fan, and to have it actually work, I had a trip out to California, went over to his house, you know, where he had a studio, and so it was really such a great vibe. That was one of the more inspiring encounters I've had, you know, with the people that I look up to.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about the new album, Dream Good. Now, I know that your sound sort of, I would like to say, matured with The Long Now, which is the previous album you had. But here, I think you really sort of get to the next level, start writing more about your life experiences at your current age, and sort of, we kind of move away from a lot of what I would call your typical power pop, which is where we talk about girls and emotions.
Love and loss.
Right. Getting the girl, keeping the girl. And now we're talking more about, you know, leaving a mark, feelings that are different from, you know, somebody in your early 20s. More things that are what I would say middle-aged almost. Yeah,
sure. And I do feel like, I think in the past, you know, I've never really necessarily, you know, I never sit down to write a song and say, I'm going to write a song about this particular thing. Usually it's just kind of, you know, random inspiration. Mm-hmm. I do feel like maybe this time around I was a little more comfortable and secure. Like the last record of mine, The Long Now, I had a bunch of heavy stuff that went on. I lost both my parents in the course of the year, and yeah, you know, major life changes and things like that. So, and I was trying hard for that when I finally got my stuff together and you know, got an actual record out. I was trying to have it not be like, the miserable bastard, have every song be like Morrissey, but or whatnot, for lack of a comparison. But
right.
So this time around, I did feel maybe a little more confident in just just maybe trying to speak to some different things, and even not a few of the songs are not necessarily that I'm writing about my own life experience. It's just writing about something that tangible that hopefully people can connect to. And part of it too is also that I did some co-writing. My friend Scott Sachs, we wrote 2 of the songs together, and he was in the band Wanderlust.
Yes,
it's a really awesome band called Queen Electric these days. And I gotta say, I mean, like the 2 songs we wrote, he is a powerhouse as far as songwriters go, and I mean, his contribution is as strong as if not more so than mine in those songs that we wrote together. So he might actually get some of that credit for a couple of those songs.
Cool.
But but I just I guess you grow up and you live, and hopefully the things I'm saying people might get something out of, and if they don't, that's cool. Maybe they'll dig the fact that it has a Beatlesque melody.
That's for sure. What was it like working with Brad Jones, who I consider like one of the best producers ever? Yeah,
I kind of, it took a while, but over the years of, when I really started paying attention to, who mixed or produced this record or that record, I just realized his name kept popping up on, like, so many records I absolutely love. And I just, for several years, I actually thought about, wow, it would be really great to someday work with Brad Jones. And then I could list 10 or 20 people that I'd love to work with. But he was way up there on that list. And it was only in the last couple of years I actually particularly had a show. Well, 2 things happened. I realized that his partner, Robin Eaton, at Alex the Great Studios, is actually originally from Delaware, where I'm from. So then I knew some mutual people, and I kind of got, like an email or a phone number. I was like, yeah, I'd really like to talk to these guys. And that happened, and then I actually opened up for Marshall Crenshaw at a show and just had a conversation knowing that Brad Jones did at least one of his records. Wow. And, and he was basically like, yeah, they're really cool guys. Just call them up. They'll answer the phone. And sure enough, when I finally, got the nerve up to get in touch with them, they were totally cool and approachable and just very straightforward. And I got to say, Brad Jones was as cool and as professional and as awesome as I hoped he would, as I imagined he would be. He was definitely like very focused and driven as far as, working in the studio, but the nicest, coolest guy. And he did some things like, I hope to, in the future, maybe work with him again where I do a record start to finish. As it turned out, just because of budget, kind of things.
Right.
And the artist, I recorded the entire record and basically brought the tracks down and he mixed them. But even just mixing the songs, he ended up doing some edits and playing some little parts that totally made the songs, and he lived up to everything I expected he would be. I wrote that on my CD as like Brad Jones, my hero, in the credits, and he's my hero. He's the man.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time and for this little interview.
Oh, thank you.
Best of luck on tour, and may the sales just come in and people just snap up the CD, because Dream Good it's on my top 10 list. It's one of the best CDs of the year, in my opinion. So keep going.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. It's great to talk to you.